Hello all, and welcome to tonight's beer review, which I am dubbing the Had some problems finding a beer to review. So there's actually like two local things on the shelf that I hadn't seen. It's like, I wonder if I reviewed this before, and I was pretty sure I had reviewed one of them before, but the other I wasn't. So I ended up on my phone trying to go through all my old videos and figure out if I had reviewed it, and it turned out I had reviewed both of them. So I didn't have any local beers or ciders, for that matter, to go and review. So I went and picked up something fairly interesting off the shelf here to review. And this is from a sake brewery that sort of moved into that's moved into craft brewing. Now, as you can see here, this is a matcha IPA. It's technically an imperial IPA if you look at the ABV, since it's 8.5. And what I like about it is that, you know, it actually has like an ingredients list and all the other important stuff on the back here, and I don't think you can see it too well because I like how my camera will go blurry and want to go close. But it says it has food coloring in it, and likely that's to go and make it look like matcha. Because if you go and brew with matcha, you're not actually going to get the matcha powder in there that turns it green. You're going to get like the matcha flavors, obviously, but when you filter the beer, the matcha powder is going to go out, and you have to filter it, otherwise all the rest of the stuff in the wort's going to be suspended there, and that's not going to be that great. So you have to add some color hereafter. Um, Kizakura Kyoto. Kizakura is the name of it, and Kyoto is a city where it's brewed. I once visited Kyoto when I lived in Japan. It is an absolutely lovely city. And Uji is a sort of outlying part of Kyoto. It's like its own sort of special village, sort of away from it. That's kind of been, as the city has expanded, is kind of like part of it now as a suburb. And it's well known for its very high quality green tea. And if you do happen to find yourself in Kyoto, by all means visit Uji. It's also where A Tale from Genji sort of ends. And it's really one of the most beautiful places in Japan that I visited. Um, yeah, historical, beautiful, all that kind of stuff. And now we have a beer from that vicinity using green tea from that vicinity. So, without much further ado, let's go and pour this out and taste it. Notice here it's got like a pool tap. I haven't had a pull tab beer in like ages. Oh my. Now this would have been kind of apropos for St. Patty's Day, huh? Much greener than any green beer I've ever seen before. So, deep, almost opaque green. Maybe a little light gets through it to get almost a bluish green color to it. With a thick, frothy, foamy, kind of lime green head here. That is redolent of hops, Pacific Northwest style hops. An interesting, almost licorice or anise undertone. And sort of bready to biscuity malts. The scent of matcha tea is there, but it's very, very subtle. It's kind of underneath all the other flavors. other scents, I suppose. Actually, it's sort of coming out. It's making a little bit more sense now. So it kind of has that very matcha smell to it. The sort of green and earth at the same time that I associate with good matcha. And let's go and give this a sip. Definitely very, very bitter, both from hopping. And there's also a sort of tannic and astringent tea bitterness as well. That really shows up in the mids. Both the hops bitterness and the tea bitterness kick in the mids strongest. And into the lasting finish. Up front, that black licorice taste is almost what kicks in. Interesting. I wonder how that flavor note got in there, because that's not something I sort of associate either with matcha or with IPAs. But it's very much there. Now that I'm kind of inured to the bitterness, I can suss out both the sort of piney, resiny hop bitterness versus the sort of earthy, tannic tea bitterness. Long finish is quite bitter, but not tongue-coatingly so. It's there, but my tongue doesn't feel scorched by it. I really need to figure out a better adjective for that. There's a subtle sweetness up front. I would imagine the sugar content is actually pretty high for it to really register, considering the tea and the hops are quite intense in this. I kind of wish that now in retrospect, I kind of wish that they didn't go for this really heavy addition of food dye. I really would have much rather preferred it just, the matcha is there. You can taste it. You don't need to be primed by this very green color to think, oh, matcha is here. Especially since this green color, while the head kind of is evocative of matcha, the sort of bluish green of the beer body is anything but. It looks really artificial. And it's quite jarring because I very rarely talk about problems I have with the presentation. For me, it's all about the bouquet. It's all about on the palate. It's all about the finish. But it just looks so artificial, and it's quite sad because obviously there is quite a bit of craft that went into this, and the tea is there. You can smell it. You can taste it. There's really no need to go and blast this with heavy amounts of food coloring. At least it's not. At least it's not sticking to the tongue. A lot of people have mentioned the black licorice note here as something that's kind of an off note to them. Me, I actually like it, so, while it's kind of a taste note that I don't associate with IPAs, this is really sort of not a bog standard IPA by any means, which is one of the reasons why I picked it to review tonight. So, maybe the interaction between the malts, the hops, and the tea kind of creates that sort of black licorice flavor. If it's something that bothers you, it might be something to take into note. I like that kind of flavor, so it's just another interesting note in the flavor profile of this beer. Another thing that I really haven't mentioned is this hides the alcohol very well. You you can definitely taste that it's heavy, but it could just be heavy from malts. The dye kind of hides that really. There's not really, it doesn't drink warm, so the alcohol could really sneak up on you with this beer. I would have to say the IPA aspects aren't really that interesting. It's a very average Imperial IPA if you're just looking in terms of IPAs. This is really made by the addition of the matcha, and it makes it quite interesting, I say. Your mileage may vary, as with all things. So, what can I say about this matcha IPA? Big hop flavor, big hop smell, but not really outstanding or particularly innovative in regards to that. Um, how the hops are used. Big green tea. You can tell that the adjunct is there, and it seems to work quite well. You can tell it's distinctive, but it also adds some very interesting flavor note combinations there that kind of emerge. One thing that is really hit, I really, really don't like this artificial coloration. It's just so unnatural. Um, yeah, I understand why they did it, but yeah, it just doesn't it just doesn't work for me. So Kizakura Kyoto Matcha IPA. You can find this, give it a shot. Japanese craft beer. Not too expensive either. This bottle only costs about $6. Even though we're closer to Japan than most of the West Coast, it's probably cheaper in California where the importer is located. So give this a shot if you find it. I might be reviewing more beers from this brewer in the future because I really enjoyed this particular beer. Interesting, to say the least. Well, that is your beer review for tonight, folks. Kampai.